Warning, this video has spoilers for the first Xenoblade Chronicles. In 2019, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was announced, and shortly afterwards it was confirmed to include a brand new epilogue, Future Connected. This was less than 2 years after Torna the Golden Country came out, which is a universally loved prequel to Xenoblade 2, so the excitement for this expansion went through the roof. But something weird happened over the years. I know many people that played the whole trilogy, including the DLC stories, but who still skipped on playing Future Connected. It's not like people hate it, but it often gets called the worst Xenoblade title, because the series standards are just that high. So, how bad or good is Future Connected actually, and should you play it if you haven't already? Let's find out. Before the game came out, we only knew 2 things about it. One, the main character seemed to be Melia, a fan favorite who still had some loose ends by the main game. If any of the characters deserved more closure, it was definitely her. The second thing we knew is that Future Connected would take place on the Bionis shoulder. This was a test map for the original Xenoblades. Fans knew of its existence for almost 10 years at that point, so finally getting to explore it was exciting to say the least. We didn't know much about the story before it came out, and it turned out to be a relatively simple one. The epilogue takes place 1 year after Zanza was defeated by Shulk. He and Melia now want to check out Alchemoth. It was originally supposed to be a short trip there and back, but a random laser out of Alchemoth had other plans and they crashed down on the Bionis shoulder. 2 of Ricky's children, Kino and Nene, snuck aboard with them, so the 4 of them team up. The group finds a nearby High-Entia camp, and there someone explains to them that the creature that shot the ship down has one of the funniest names in the entire series.
The Fog King. The Fog King.
Fog King. Fog King.
The Fog King.
That's the basic gist of the story. Your ultimate goal is to beat the Fog King, but for a good chunk of the game, this plot takes a backseat. The old inhabitants of Alchemoth are currently divided. Some of them want to keep trying to retake Alchemoth from the Fog King, while others don't want to make any more sacrifices. The second storyline consists out of Melia growing into her role as the new High-Entia leader, while uniting the people on the shoulder. Lots of the High-Entia here have suffered the same pain that Melia did, so it's great to see that she could become their new hope and that she could get her home back in the process. The story is not that long, it gets all over the place and there are some pacing issues, but I do like Melia's role in it. Shulk takes a more laid back and supportive role, but it is nice to see that he grew to be more optimistic and confident after the events of the main story. Kino and Nene are adorable, but they have very little presence in the story. I started out really liking Kino. He was adopted by Ricky and he wants to become just as brave as his new father so he can one day repay him. That's so precious. I was rooting for him early on, but he kinda peaked at the very beginning. I like his introduction and how he doesn't want to let Nene take the fall for him, but he just doesn't get many other good moments. Nene is his older sister and she acts surprisingly responsible. She is a breath of fresh air as far as Nopon characters go, but she never left a big impression on me. Honestly, the best thing about Kino and Nene is the fact that they tell us a lot of stories about how Ricky is the best dad ever. That alone makes me happy that they are here. Future Connected also brings back some side characters from the main game. One of them is Steelen, who was a random NPC in Alchemoth. Shulk and Melia remember helping him with his research, so I guess that makes some of the sidequests canon. Another character that's brought back is Tyrea, Melia's secret stepsister. Yeah, they have a complicated relationship. At the end of Xenoblade 1, you can do a side quest where you learn more about her, and by the end of it, she and Melia have this mutual respect for each other, but their storyline still felt unresolved. Future Connected really feels like a natural continuation of that side quest. There are some downsides to the story, but we'll get to that later. Overall, Future Connected is a decent epilogue. The best way to see it is as an extra chapter of the first Xenoblades, with some different gameplay. You can't really compare it to expansions like Torna or Future Redeemed. In fact, Future Connected does the opposite of expanding and removed a lot of the mechanics. Let's talk about the combat. At a first glance, the battles are almost identical to regular Xenoblade 1 gameplay, but a lot of things were removed. First of all, there are only 4 party members instead of 7. Shulk and Melia have the exact same arts as they did in the rest of Xenoblade 1. The only change is that Shulk doesn't have Monado enchant, since there are 0 Mechon on the Bionis shoulder. Kino and Nene don't introduce any new playstyles, as they have the exact same arts as Sharla and Ryan respectively, with their only changes being their animations and some names. These are the only party members you'll have for the entire game, which is a problem. Future Connected is a short experience, but still, it sucks that you have so little playstyles and team compositions to choose from. But there are also 2 combat mechanics that were left out of Future Connected. Shulk can't get visions anymore, so you won't get warnings when strong attacks are about to hit you. This is faithful to the story, as Shulk willingly gave up his visions at the end of Xenoblade, but the combat system was balanced around the fact that you could block strong attacks from visions with tools like Monado Arts or Melia's Reflection. Now it's either dumb luck if you'll survive, or you have to react, which requires insanely fast reflexes and prior knowledge of which attacks are strong to begin with. There are also no chain attacks anymore, and instead you have union strikes. So on the Bionis shoulder you'll find some Nopon who name themselves Spawn Spectres. They will always fight alongside you and deal some chip damage, but with a fully charged party gauge you can command them to use an attack for you, to heal you, or to inflict daze on the enemy. This is a lame replacement for chain attacks. Every now and then you'll get an extra chance, where you can pick a second command which basically guarantees that you'll win the battle. There is a higher chance of this happening if you have more Pawn Spectres with high tension. In other words, it's luck based, which just makes me like this mechanic even less. The cutscenes are charming and I like seeing your character's reactions, but honestly, I'd take chain attacks any day over this. I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but this is the worst combat system in the entire series. Many fans already think that the combat from the original Xenoblade sucks, at least in comparison to what came after. I personally still enjoy it, but I do prefer the combat system from every other Xenoblade. Part of the problem is that it's RNG based how long your chain attacks will last, and this RNG is arguably worse with the extra chances for union strikes. Overall, there is also just a lack of control. Unlike in Xenoblade 2 and 3, there is no way to speed up how fast your arts will charge, and you can't even prevent your character from auto-attacking, for example. The combat can still be enjoyed, but visions and chain attacks just added way more excitement. They're both tools that can get you out of sticky situations. Visions give you a chance to survive attacks you normally wouldn't. Chain attacks reward character synergy and even allow for some creativity. Is the combat frustratingly bad? No, but it does get close to it sometimes. It can also get repetitive very quickly with only 4 characters to pick from. This just feels like the bare minimum for Xenoblade combat. Thankfully, the music is so good that the fighting was still enjoyable for me. Still, let's look at the rest of the gameplay, like the exploration and the side content. This part will be more positive, because I like the shoulder. It's a huge place with a lot of variety in it. There is also a good amount of side quests, including a collection quest in the form of finding the Pawn Spectres. Yeah, near the beginning, the leader 1-1 asks you to find the 11 other Pawn Spectres, and it's an objective you'll probably complete over the course of your playthrough. They are divided into 3 groups. The red Nopons are focused on attacking, the blue ones are focused on healing, and the yellow ones on debuffs. You actually need to find at least 1 Nopon of every group to unlock the union strikes to begin with. So, in other words, it will probably take you 2 or 3 hours on average before you unlock the chain attack replacement. I have already complained enough about the combat, so I'll just say that I appreciate the collection aspect. It's good to have something to work towards. Last but not least, there is also the replacement for heart-to-hearts in the form of quiet moments. For these, 2 of your characters have a not-so-quiet moment, where they talk about whatever's on their mind. You don't get to make dialogue choices in them, but the scenes are fully voice acted and still nice to watch. There are plenty of heartfelt or just funny moments in them. I'd say the best part of Future Connected is seeing the characters interact, so the quiet moments are a good addition. So far, Future Connected seems okay. The combat is very minimalistic, but the rest of the gameplay is solid enough to salvage it. But there are still the problems with the story that I mentioned earlier. This part of the video will have some spoilers for this game specifically, because it's about the rest of the story and some missed opportunities. Okay, let's talk about Tyrea again. I've said it before on my channel and I'll say it again, I wish she was playable here. Having just one extra party member would have helped so much with the repetitive combat problem. There were some UI elements found for her in the game's coding. A neutral portrait like all your party members have next to their HP, and a sideways pictogram for in the menus. I do believe that if Future Connected had more time and resources, she definitely would have been a party member. She's the only NPC to have a quiet moment, and her development from Melia's old enemy into one of her most trusted allies is one of the most important parts of the story. Oh hey, and speaking of enemies, Future Connected has the worst antagonist from the entire Xenoblade series. I'm planning to talk about Gelgar at length in a future video, but I can already say he sucks. When he gets introduced, he doesn't even try to hide the fact that he's racist towards pure-blooded High-Entia and Machina. A few hours later, he tries to fight you for the first time, you beat him, and then he's not involved with the rest of the story. I'm convinced that the only reason he exists is so that Melia has a villain that she can talk to and have conflicts with, because clearly she couldn't do that with the Fog King. I don't even want to say his name anymore actually. The final boss is just a random monster that can't even talk. Why is it even here then, you may ask? Well, back in 2020, Future Connected was meant to be a teaser for the future of the series. Minor spoilers for Xenoblade 2 incoming, I know it seems random. The Fog King turns out to be a Goldo from the land of Morava. And by the way, the only official confirmation of this comes from the Xenoblade 3 official artworks book. So, the rifts in the sky are showing that the worlds from Xenoblade 1 and 2 are starting to converge with each other. This is interesting in retrospect, but the Fog King still feels like a lame idea. He feels like he would be a mini-boss or a monster that you would defeat at the end of a quest, but not the final boss. Even when you ignore the antagonists, Future Connected still has a very underwhelming story. There aren't any plot twists or really hype moments. Hell, the most emotional scene is all the way at the beginning with Kino's sad backstory. Aside from with its villains, it's not like Future Connected did anything wrong with the story. There is just a lack of truly memorable moments. It's a shame, because I love seeing that Melia finally gets her home back, that she gets a better relationship with her only family member, and that she gets the recognition from the High-Entia. At the very least, the epilogue did her justice. If you compare Future Connected to the rest of the series, then it's obviously the worst. It's just not a fair competition. Even the DLC stories came out close to a year after their base games. Future Connected, on the other hand, was developed alongside Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and came out on the same day. It didn't have the same time or resources that any other Xenoblade had. But when you judge it as an epilogue, it's solid. The Bionis shoulder is a huge and heavily anticipated area with so much to do in it, and I think it makes up for the combat being on the weaker side. The story is short and mostly uneventful, but its main appeal is just spending time with the characters again. You can see how Melia gets a happier ending, how Shulk became more positive, and how Riki is apparently a giga chat of a father. I think it's a game that you should only play if you really like the first Xenoblades. But even if it's not the most important or memorable game in the series, I'm still thankful that it wrapped up the loose ends that we were left with. And that it introduced some of the best battle themes in the series. Thanks for watching the video, consider leaving a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you want to see more Xenoblade videos. This has been Maxmonado, signing out.